Okay. I was going to say, please stand for the pledge, but apparently everybody already did. Thank you. Very compliant people. Please join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Betty, if you would let the record reflect that the board met in executive session to discuss matters leading to the employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, removal of a particular person or persons. Our first item of business is the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second? Do I? Excuse me. Is there any discussion of the minutes? Tim?
Yeah, just a one thing with regards to right after comments from the public with the action items B through F, which were involved the MOA on the administrative changes. And it says that Trustee Madden asked for an explanation for the restructuring of the positions, and then it just stops. I think I had also commented that, and I had asked Peter and also the board to consider what would be a more, I guess the way I put it, ideal administrative structure. That I said that the administrative structure in this district is unique, and there are certain aspects to it that I haven't seen before, and that I appreciated the change that was the reduction in positions, but that we look at other structures to see, you know, if it would be more efficient. And I don't know if anybody else recalls that. The videotape is not on the website. I went back to look at it, but it wasn't there.
I do. I recall it also. I think to help Betty in these situations, if for the next meeting, if you could write how you would like the minutes to appear so that we have something concrete and then we can vote to amend them in that respect.
Okay.
Or do you want to?
What he's asking, you can vote on it now, and I'll just...
And you can do it?
That the minutes are approved as amended.
Okay.
It matches my memory.
Everyone seems good. And Marianne, your edits have been...
but I'm okay.
And your other edits that you made a couple of comments previously that
Yes.
were corrected. Great.
Yeah,
They were technical.
They were very straightforward. Yes. Okay. Motion to approve the minutes as amended. Do I have a motion? And a second? All in favor? Thank you. Next is our report from the superintendent.
Great. So welcome back, everyone. It's nice to see so many of you here. I hope you all had a great summer. I did myself. Did a lot of planning, read some great books. And as many of you know, I'm working on one of my yets in learning how to surf. It is a, yes, it is a sight to behold, Trustee
You missed
Ledmar.
the two surfer videos.
Bow tie surfing, here we go.
No bow ties. So,
I was waiting for the Beach Boy music to chime in at a certain point.
so you wait next summer. I'm proud to report that on opening day we welcome back 2,569 students to North Shore, and it has been really an amazing opening. When I spoke to the faculty and staff last week, in addition to showing some surfing videos, we actually talked specifically about beginnings, we talked about perspectives, and we talked about possibilities. We also spent a lot of time talking about the power of the word yet and what that means for student learning. So we'll be unpacking that as a system this year. Tonight, I'm really proud to present the district's 5-year strategic plan and additional 2018-19 goals. The strategic plan, as you know, will inform our work through 2023, and is focused on 3 pillars. The first is teaching and learning, the second is equity for all learners, and the third is social emotional learning. And it represents the work of 3,000 teachers, administrators, parents, community members, and students. I extend a very hearty welcome to our new SGO rep, John Labate. Welcome. Michael Albanese, who's not here tonight, will join you at some point in a future meeting. So I was going to say it wouldn't be a North Shore board meeting without a Labate at the table. So congratulations. I'm looking forward to working with you this year, and I hope that you are off to a terrific year, John. First days of school are super exciting, full of new challenges, and I will say the oppressive heat didn't help us for the first couple of days of school. The air conditioning, I want to be just give a little update on where we are with those air conditioning projects that were approved by the voters in May for the large spaces. They require approval from state ed departments. So like in your home, it's a little different. When you set aside the funding for an air conditioning project in your home or HVAC, you set that money aside. You may need a permit or so to make that happen, but you get on a contractor schedule, and that work tends to happen fairly quickly. In schools, it doesn't happen quickly at all. So those projects are currently in design by our mechanical engineers and our architects. We will eventually utilize an expedited process to get those approved, but I want to be sure everybody understands that the approval to get that work started could take upwards of 4 to 6 months. So we're actively working on those. But we are definitely doing all we can to move it along. In the meantime, I have communicated with all the principals. All the principals now have built contingency plans for what to do if we have more hot days. Can we double up classes? Can we move kids into different spaces? Because when it is as hot as it was on Wednesday and Thursday of last week, children aren't learning. So we need to figure that out. We also have some code requirements around moving fresh air through spaces, so we've got to balance all of those needs. If you haven't done so yet, and you can do it right here, North Shore High School student and football player Luca Mara has been nominated by the USA Football Association Heart of a Giant Award. So you can check it out online. You can vote every single day on all your multiple devices. I think I have 3 or 4 that I'm hitting every day for him, so let's see if we can get that done. Today is, for those of you who don't know, and maybe you do, today is primary day in New York, and I hope everyone had an opportunity to vote. I do want to commend Mrs. Finder, Mr. Dennis, and Dr. Zublionis, who, along with John Hall, worked to enhance security at all of the polling sites. Each school had additional security in place too, from 7:30 in the morning until 6 p.m. And we also modified our arrival and dismissal procedures to accommodate Littleworth Lane, because that was open for traffic, so we didn't accept any students there. So I offer an added thanks to Seacliff parents, faculty, and staff for doing a really good job keeping kids safe today. So thank you for that. I did want to make a note on kindergarten for the board. So registration this year has been really unpredictable. At this point in time, we have very small sections at both Seacliff and Glenwood Landing. Based on the numbers that I presented to the board at the end of August, we lost three children at Seacliff after the letters for class placement went out, so those classes are particularly small. With regard to the Glenhead sections, they are currently resting at 21 and 21. The board authorized me to hire a teaching assistant to share between those sections. That teaching assistant is in our employ and being scheduled. Mrs. Nimmo and I are speaking every single day. We're looking at the needs of the cohort, studying the staffing model, and we're looking at all the schedules to determine when are the teachers alone with kids. And so that is ongoing. We'll make sure that they are supported, but we want to balance supporting them with their ability to function independently as well in the class. So both teachers know and understand that we are sensitive to the needs of the classes. We're going to work towards a strong outcome, And I thank everybody for their patience as we work through figuring out what's the next right decision for this cohort of kids. So in closing, I wish you all a wonderful year of learning. I'm excited that you're back, and I look forward to chipping away at all of our individual and collective gets together. So have a great year.
Thank you. We move on to the report from the SGO. John?
All right, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is John Labati. I'm the SGO president for this year, or co-president, along with Mike Albanese, who's not here tonight, but he'll be here next meeting. And we are the student government representatives for this year for the Board of Education. So I'll get right started. So first we have homecoming coming up in about 3 or 4 weeks. It's on October 13th this year, luckily a little bit later in the year. Our main thing is, or one of our main things is a Spirit Week that's leading up to it. Sadly, we only have 3 days this week for Spirit Week because of the PSAT and one other, I think Columbus Day is that week. So we only have Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. We're voting tomorrow on the final of what these days will hold, and I think what it's going to be is a Western Day, matching all of the popular trends right now. In Western, I mean like the Wild West. Yeah, and then we'll have our Maroon and White Day and one more day to be determined. In addition, on Friday before homecoming, we'll have our pep rally. This year, Mike and I really want to add something more exciting to pep rally. We're talking it over tomorrow. Tomorrow is really our first official meeting. We had one last week, but it was kind of a mess because it was the second day of school and we had to try to get everyone together. But we're going to try to figure out something more exciting to bring to the pep rally this year to try to get all the students more involved and more excited for the homecoming and the upcoming year. In addition, tomorrow we will decide the homecoming theme, which we determine every year for the SGO to kind of meld the pep rally around and meld homecoming around. Also this year for homecoming, we're not doing 4 separate floats for the grades. If you remember the parades, each grade made a float, and because of lack of student involvement, we're going to make 1 float for the high school this year with everybody contributing. So, and the same goes for fall sports night. We're also doing away with fall sports night, which was an attempt last year to extend sports night into, I think Emily and Lindsay had tried to, and we didn't have much of a student showing, so we're gonna do away with that this year. Moving on though to freshman elections. Freshmen will be elected in 2 weeks for SGO offices. With it'll be announced, petitions will be given out next week, due Friday. And they will, this year they're going to make speeches for their office because we really want to incorporate, make it less of a popularity contest and more of like an SGO contest. So that will happen in 2 weeks. The results will be announced at the SGO meeting and then on the announcement the next day. So new ideas and goals for this year that Mike and I have, and the SGO as a whole. First we want to make some new events that have a lasting effect with North Shore. We want to maybe start some new traditions or start more things that can get students more involved or just improve the overall quality of student life in general. Not that it isn't great already, but it could always be better. So one of the things that we're looking at is, or that we really want to implement, is actually have a talent show some point midway through the year. Something fun for the kids to do. We haven't decided the details yet, but this is something we're definitely going to pursue. Also, we're going to continue our monthly fundraisers without September just because of the chaos of homecoming and freshman elections and trying to get back into the swing of things. In addition, for Halloween, since it's coming up, and we have everyone gets in their costumes for Halloween, but we want to extend it to a week-long thing, or up until Halloween, where we can make a fun, enjoyable week for the students. So, like this year, Halloween is on a Wednesday, and we want to call it Spook Week, where we decorate the school with Halloween-themed colors and things like that, and have some maybe after-school events where just fun Halloween-related things to do for the students. And in addition, we also are, or something that Mike and I are going to work on in the coming months, is bringing CASA to, or the Coalition Against Substance Abuse, to the students at North Shore. We really think that we can get more student involvement in CASA because it is such a looming topic, such an essential topic and student involvement is essential in it because that's really like one of the main target groups of CASA. And we think we can really personalize it through SGO to try to bring it to the students through another pathway. So we definitely look forward to working with all of those related with CASA. And that's pretty much it for now, for the first week and a half of school. So thank you, and I look forward to working with all of you this year.
Busy, good job.
Thank you, John. We really appreciate the details and the depth of your update, and we look forward to seeing you this year. Thank you.
You too.
Take care, John.
Next, we move on to regular business. We'll have our discussion tonight is our final discussion on the strategic plan and the district goals for the year.
Yes, so I had presented, thank you. So a couple of weeks ago, I had presented the strategic plan to the board. Board gave me some feedback. I incorporated that feedback presented that back to the board again. We wanted to see if there were any additional comments for discussion, any edits. The idea is, with any luck, that we will have this adopted by the board this evening so we can start moving the work along. We've also built a series of, and so I won't go through all of the 50 some odd action steps in the strategic plan. We went through all of them the last time. If there are specific items for discussion, we can do that. The board also asked me to develop a document on what are the things that we will do in the first year of the plan, so I shared that with the board. I can speak to those things right now. So in the area of teaching and learning, firstly, we want to create a K-12 curriculum council that will include students. That will serve as a research and development group that ensures North Shore's curriculum remains current, purposeful, and challenging. We will also create, God bless you, we'll also create a contemporary instruction committee, and that will also include students. It'll be a subcommittee of that K-12 curriculum council, and its purpose will be to research current and innovative instructional practices, including technologies that will deepen student learning, foster student engagement, and develop student skills for ever-changing, increasingly interconnected world. We'll also this year focus on re-envisioning the goals and purpose of the Professional Development Committee. Promoted excellence within a challenging academic program by monitoring, assessing, and continuously improving teaching and learning, and looking to improve rates of mastery on assessments and the like. And so some of these, those will be the actionable things. So you'll see the first year of the plan is more foundational work that will position us to take more actionable steps in years 2, 3, 4, and 5. Simultaneously, we have some multi-year goals that involve digging into research on student engagement and commitment to learning, enhancing our ability to elicit student voice and empower students to drive their own learning environment, engaging student voice in curriculum instruction and assessment practices, researching and proposing how to structure time, so really looking at how the master schedules are developed at the high school, the middle school, and the elementary. How are we using our time, and are we maximizing student learning in the way that we're structured? And starting a process of aligning all of our general ed and special ed programs based on student need and a focus on confidence and independence. So that's the teaching and learning goal. And then things that we think that will stay, that we will start this year, that will always stay in the queue, are fostering a culture where growth is the center of learning, developing skills, the skills and dispositions of the shared valued outcomes, and promoting our district as a leader in education and expanding on the district's innovative approaches in teaching and learning. When we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, we talked about that people always talk with me about the value of a North Shore education and what that means, and making sure that that is celebrated and promoted within and among the district and region. So in the Equity for All Learners pillar, we'll be looking to develop our leadership to address equity issues throughout the system, developing and implementing a K-12 anti-bias training program, looking at our hiring practices and trying to recruit a more diverse applicant pool, and developing a family liaison position team, which will help to support families who are maybe have first-generation college kids or low socioeconomics, or they don't speak English. Having a group of people that are responsible for making sure that they are connected and managing all of the stuff that comes along with having kids in school. We'll also multi-year be looking at closing achievement gaps among various subgroups, identifying and publishing our equity story. Who are we as a district? Analyzing data related to diversity and equity, identifying areas of inequity, and then engaging in targeted professional learning to support growth in those areas. And then ongoing, we'll be promoting a school environment that is supportive, engaging, and inspiring of a diverse student body. Developing an awareness and understanding among all constituencies of the diversity, attitudes, values, and beliefs of everybody in North Shore and beyond, with an eye on promoting acceptance. And then we'll put together, and so that's the equity pieces. And then for social emotional learning, we'll put together a multidisciplinary K-12 team to oversee identification, development, and support of social emotional learning K through 12. We'll do a district needs assessment to determine where are the health and wellness supports that exist, and then what can we do to make them better. We'll seek this year in year one to develop a referral plan and then approaches to address at-risk students and their behaviors. And then looking at the social emotional needs of students, so to inform all of our instructional and academic matters, so calendar, homework, workload, how do these things all interplay with each other, particularly around the calendar and activities, and how does that impact students? And then, excuse me, ongoing goals will be identifying applicable brain research to improve wellness, and increasing opportunities for all students to engage in purposeful play, discovery, and productive struggle. And then the ongoing goal that will likely never go away is promoting a reflective K-12 school culture that's safe, nurturing, and aspirational. So those are the targets within the pillars of the strategic plan that we'll work on this year. It's pretty ambitious, but totally doable, and we'll get to work on that right away. And then in the area of our annual goals, we'll be implementing the work that we completed last year around the skills, dispositions, and learning progressions of communicators and thinkers. We'll have a presentation to the board on that. We'll get to the board some information on that in an upcoming meeting and packet. And then we'll be building those skills, dispositions, and learning progressions for 2 new shared valued outcomes. Those are problem solvers and committed individuals. And then the year after that, we'll finish up the other 2. So in 1920, we will implement problem solvers and committed individuals, and then build the final 2. And then the year after that, do the rollout. Okay, so we'll also be developing action plans from the Tri-States review. Looking at homework this year, what is the value and purpose of it? K-12. Conducting an external program audit in literacy, developing 3-year action plans in counseling, monitoring our one-to-one Chromebook implementation, operationalizing a process to review evidence-based practices in K-12 to inform our continuous improvement, and then developing a master plan and community process for a possible bond referendum. And then lastly, as if that wasn't enough, we'll do a compliance review of our board policies through NYSBA, and then internally we'll look at our instructional policies, the 4,000s and the 5,000s this year through the policy committee. So that's what I've got for you.
Thank you. It's
You're welcome.
certainly ambitious. Thank you in particular for the work on the action items, which are detailed and really flesh out what we talked about last
Great.
time. At our last meeting, we had a good discussion about our strategic plan, and we have some more detail now, and later in the meeting, we will be voting to finalize the strategic plan and the goals for this year. So with that in mind, if I could hear from trustees, if I could hear from all of you, your questions or thoughts. Is there anyone here? Dave?
Really good work, Peter. I like the way it's structured, where you start with the pillars and you move into the sub points and then work to the actual specific action plans. It's a very tried and true method, and I like that it goes from the big picture to actual concrete steps we can take.
Thank you. It's going to get very microscopic very soon.
Yes, I see that. There's steps below this.
Yes.
Need blue pens. So, I spoke with folks who participated in the initial planning sessions, and they had asked me about how people would be involved. And one thing that I was curious about was on the K through 12 Teaching and Learning Oversight Committee and other committees like that. If you could just tell a little bit about how they're going to be comprised. Is that going to be from administration and staff, or what do you see for that?
So all of the committees we have some oversight committees that will oversee the work in each of these pillars. There's one for K-12 teaching and learning, one for equity for all learners, one for social emotional learning. They will be comprised of, it'll be co-chaired by a couple of administrators, each of them, and then they will be comprised of teachers, administrators, students, and where practical, and we'll get some parents involved in this, and where possible and practical and relevant, we'll have community-based organizations involved as well. So it should be multidisciplinary.
And then just another very quick question. Sorry, did I?
Just one,
Yeah,
just
sure.
so I give you a nice full answer here. So each of the committees will, because they have a lot to oversee. So within each committee, there will be a structure of subcommittees, right, that will then work on something very much more specific, right? So there might be a group that looks at wellness in a particular way in social emotional learning, where another group might be studying really deeply substance abuse and use and risk factors and all the like. So those usually like 3 or 4 subcommittees within each committee. So the monthly committee, because we want to be able to capture a lot of folks to be involved. Generally speaking, when we have 20 to 30 people on a committee, they're not great places for work to get done, so they're great places for reporting out. But the sort of the nuts and bolts work happens in between those meetings that will happen at the subcommittee level. Okay?
Thank you.
Sure.
And then just a very specific question. You list the names of certain administrators and or faculty or teachers that are working on these things, but I assume those are the names of the folks who are doing that, but because some of these will be beyond, a set time frame, that responsibility would travel with the role, not the person, because staffing, unfortunately, is always kind of fluid.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, just a question. I have a question about goals, but should we do strategic plan first and then do goals?
No,
or?
I think does it
It's up to you.
go?
So I had proposed the homework goal, and we talked about that. And I would just ask that we add a little something to that, which is, at the end, currently it states, research the purpose and value of homework K through 12 and propose policies and processes that support best practices for all students. I think that captures what we want to do. One of the reasons I proposed it is that in the past, the district has had an approach to homework that was supposed to be somewhat universal, but the execution ended up being vastly different across certainly different buildings, but even different classes within the school. So I'd like to add the phrase, let's get this from my other link here, across all buildings and classrooms at the end of it. I don't think we're looking for a homogeneous approach, and we want to keep an organic structure within the district where different communities and buildings have some flexibility. But I think that when we as a district identify what is the correct current approach to homework, that it's something that is to some degree universal, and that parents can understand what it means to be a student doing homework in North Shore across buildings and classrooms.
So can you just read it to me again, please?
Sure, it would be, I'll tell you what, why don't you, I have them open different windows, hold on a second. Research the purpose and value of homework K through 12 and propose policies and processes that support best practices for all students across all buildings and classrooms.
I just want to respond to that, if it's okay. I think there's a little confusion in that wording because you're talking about K through 12. If you want to say that the homework across the elementary levels is the same, but to say across all buildings when you're talking about multiple buildings at different levels, I don't think makes a lot of sense.
Are you saying?
I'm not saying a second grader should be doing the same amount of homework as an AP or an IB student in a class.
I understand that, but the way that reads, when you say across all buildings, there are, if you want to say across all elementary buildings, right? But it's not, you're talking about K through 12.
That's
so
a good
you're
point.
talking about buildings in the middle school, the high school, and the elementary. So the way you put, just because of the reference to K through 12, I understand your point, right? So if you're in Seacliff or you're in Glen Head in the second grade, the expectations for homework should be the same in both buildings, right? That's what
That's a good clarification.
That's what you're getting at.
So what
right?
about, let me throw this out at you, see what you think. Across all classrooms at similar levels, at comparable levels. In other words, you want a second grade classroom to be the same at all three schools. You also would like, if there are multiple sections of a Regents biology class, to be getting the same thing.
Could I say?
I'm not sure I agree with that either.
Okay.
Would it help if we
Same bio
said?
should be different based on the teacher to some degree? In other words, if we're engaging in a study of what is an appropriate amount of homework for a particular class, I'm not saying, again, that an English class should necessarily be the same as a physics class, but that similar, once we identify what those approaches are, I want to make sure we're implementing them as we've decided
Because
is
there's
best.
teacher discretion involved based upon the student body. So you could have an earth science Regents class that has an inclusion sector in it with children with IEPs than a Regents earth science class that does not. So the composition of a classroom can make a difference in how a teacher approaches homework. And I think one of the problems that used to exist before testing in Common Core is that students were, the emphasis, while the main subjects were the same, the emphasis may have been different. And so that when they hit the middle school, you could tell where a student came from what building. When we switched to all the testing in the Common Core, I think part of the complaint with teachers is a lot of their discretion was taken out of how they teach and what they teach.
Could I make a suggestion?
So I just don't want any teacher to feel
I have one too.
handcuffed.
Let's see what you have
Agreed.
to say first.
I think we may, as a board, be getting ahead of the item, which is research and a proposal. And I don't want to get ahead of what we're going to hear the research says. I hear the interest in consistency, which we think makes sense based on what we've heard about, say, different kindergarten programs. And I think we can all understand teachers feeling the need for some latitude to teach the students that they're teaching. So I'm gonna, if there's a way to encapsulate those things.
I think I have something.
But I think we're gonna see this again, and we're gonna have research rather than our own speculation upon which to evaluate those proposals.
That sounds good. I don't need the wording change, but I want to make sure that
I think I have
when we actually come up with something that makes sense, we're doing it, not just saying it.
Can I?
And if
I
I
wish
could
you
just,
would.
I think what you're looking at, or what you're looking for is something that says greater consistency, maybe, within that. I don't know if the statement captures it, but that seems to,
That would actually work.
Yeah.
and it's not that it's the same, but
It shouldn't be the same.
Right, and that there's.
What we don't want, I mean, in bold terms, we don't want a first grade class in Glenwood Landing having 5 minutes of homework and a first grade class in Seacliff having 90 minutes of homework, as we hear about.
Unless the research.
Generally, not those
supports that.
specific buildings. Sorry. Unless,
The research supports that. If it comes back and it says.
there should be 5 minutes in
Yes,
Glenwood and...
then we're going to do it.
Sure,
Right.
sure.
Peter.
So the experience of the idea of where we want this to land at the end is that the student experience is comparable, but not the same.
Yes.
Right? Teachers should be able to say, I'm teaching this unit on, westward expansion, and, based on the work that I've done in this class period, I'm going to assign this homework because it should reinforce the learning, and so the teachers need to have discretion there. So it's got to be comparable but not the same. Can I maybe...
And this bigger picture, right? Of
Totally, yes.
Research and homework and
Yep.
children of different ages.
So would this work to resolve the issue for you? So research the purpose and value of homework K-12 and propose consistent policies and processes at each level that support best practices for all students.
Consistent guidelines.
Policies, processes, and guidelines?
No, I was proposing take away policy and put in guidelines.
I would prefer policy, but
I won't lose sleep over if everyone
Other
wants
thoughts?
policy.
I actually agree with Mary Ann on the guidelines.
okay.
Uh,
Lisa, Rich, Joanna, any thoughts since we're chiming in? I'm sorry, yeah, you did.
I think once you put it in as a policy, you are sort of handcuffing the people involved. So maybe guideline is a better way to transition into it.
Remember, the board has a policy on homework. So that was, so in trying to capture what you wanted to achieve here, part of what we'd be looking at is the extent to which your board policy supports the research. So
Does it depend on how strong the research is or what it indicates?
that's
What
exactly
we were talking about is the implementation of the policy, and that's why I felt guidelines was more appropriate, because I think teachers should have discretion.
Let me see what Peter was going to say.
Maybe that
about-
could be within the policy, is that there's a level
Well,
of
there's
discretion.
always that.
So if policy is not the right word, then we can propose
I
consistent.
think they might be saying it is now, because the policy itself could then say,
So the policy...
Refer to guidelines.
The policy isn't a specific number. The policy is a set of... Tim, you're saying the policy should be a set of guidelines.
I suppose, or it should allow for a certain degree of flexibility,
Yes.
to accommodate different teaching practices and styles.
And student composition.
But now we're getting into making the policy right now, so
Right.
I think we're getting
Which
ahead
we
of
can't
ourselves.
do.
Right.
So we do need to end up with a policy because we already have one. What that policy says, we will see and we will discuss at the time, and we will see what the research says. But I think Peter had something to add to that.
The only thing I would offer is that if you want to, because I sort of am rethinking this now and hearing your point, is that if you wanted to switch out the word policies and/or processes for practices, that might do the trick for you.
That works for me.
It works for me great, except that we use the word practices 4 words later, so...
If Herman were here.
Practices that support best
We could
practices.
actually leave the sentence as it originally was, because then it's open-ended, and then we could do what we want with the policy. When we have when we have a full discussion. This is just supposed to be an outline. It's not supposed to be the definitive document.
If you can work the word consistency in there, I'm down.
So let's just say research the purpose and value of homework K-12 and propose consistent policies and processes that support best practices for all students.
We're back to policy.
Didn't you just say
Right.
keep it as it is?
Because we have a policy.
because
It necessarily is going to impact the policy that we have now.
Let me try this, please. So research the purpose and value of homework K-12 and propose consistent practices and processes that support. You're going to have practices twice, but I don't know how else to do this for you.
We could use guidelines.
let's make a decision here if we can.
Propose guidelines and process that support best practices.
Do you want to just tack on with a goal? With an eye towards greater consistency? No?
That would, if you leave it exactly the way it is, and you put that phrase on the end of the sentence, I think that accomplishes what you're seeking to accomplish.
Can we live with this?
I can live with it.
We can live with it.
Yeah.
Thank you. You can live with it?
I can live with it. All right, so can I just read it back to you, please?
As is, with an eye
Okay.
to greater consistency.
Research the purpose and value of Homework K-12 and propose policies and processes that support best practices for all students with an eye on consistency. Period.
That works.
Fine.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
Next trustee, with comments, questions, or request? Here,
I have some questions.
thank you.
Thank you for putting this all together, Peter. I like seeing all the little to-do list
You're welcome.
from all
I do-
that
I
higher
do
level
too.
work. On the teaching and learning short-term, multi-year goals, align all general and special education programs with student need and a focus on self-confidence and independence. Do we see that as a gap currently?
I do. Yes, I do.
Excellent, okay. And I see you have the team there, and are they, they'll be collaborating with with general education educators, I would suspect, as well as related service providers and their special ed teams?
Absolutely, yes.
Next, engaging student voice. How do we propose to do that?
We don't know yet. That's why we need to, that's why it's a goal here.
It's interesting.
Right? Because we, the student voice component of our work is so incredibly important, right? So we get, adults get in a room, we talk about what we think kids should be doing, what they should be knowing, and guess who's not at the table telling us what they think they want to know?
Are the children.
Our kids, right? And so that, to me, is a little problematic, right? So, so I want to hear from not just high school kids, right? So when we're building a strategic plan, obviously we want, older kids involved in that process. But as we're thinking about how to structure an elementary day, right? I think we're missing a key piece of the puzzle if we're not talking with elementary kids about how to structure the day. So I don't have the answer for how, but I know sort of the what.
Got it.
Well, but, do you mind? I was going to add one thing.
Sure.
That, like, when you did the initial steps, you relied so much on the student survey data
Yes.
that some of the goals have already come out of student
Yes,
voice.
yes.
So I feel hopeful that
That will inform this.
Continue, yeah.
Don't forget, and you know this, there's verbal engagement with a young student. There's also nonverbal cues. So I would say that if you're seeing certain behaviors at, well, any level actually, it could be response to how they feel in the learning environment.
I
So
agree.
that's something that we you might forget, because you're always thinking about how kids are writing, what their needs and things, or how they articulate it to us. But for some of our younger students, it can come through in nonverbal ways.
Right.
nonverbal
So
cues.
there's a whole body of literature and research out there on this topic, and so what we will start is putting a group of people together to unpack the research and some of the best practices that exist, visiting some places that may do this better than others, and then building a plan for how to roll it out.
Can I just interject, just because we're on student voice? I know we have a very informal process with our graduates, the graduate roundtable, and I think when you're talking about student voice, I know they are former students, but it might be helpful when you're talking about these kind of things. Like, my kids will say to me now that they're in college, wow, this was really helpful to me in this setting, and boy, I wish I had paid more attention here. So it might be helpful if, I don't exactly know how you're going to do that. But when you're talking about student voice, maybe kids are home on break, maybe they, some of them go locally, and maybe you can get some of those students in as well. I found this really helpful to me.
I agree.
You have.
I have
What?
more. I have more. The family liaison position team, that, again, that seems to be a gap in service. Would that come under the guise of the counseling office or a new position of some sort?
Not sure yet. Not sure
It's a
yet.
cool idea.
Yeah.
It's a very cool
So
idea.
what it's designed to do is really look at, put together a team in each of the schools that mentors families and students who are maybe on the margins, right? And so looking at identifying and advising families on programs and opportunities for at-risk kids. Information sharing as families move through the grades, right? So college scholarships, immigration issues, legal services, who would serve as an advocate, would be able to advocate for a family, maybe do some translation stuff, be a point person for transitions, mentorship, right? Those kinds of things, right? And so we're actually spending time thinking about families and groups of students who may not be taking proactive steps because they don't know what they are. It's not that they don't want to, they
Right.
just don't know which ones to take.
That's a cool idea. Conduct a K through 12 district needs assessment. Would that be a formal internal review of gaps in aligned with new curriculum standards?
Yes.
And we'd receive a report or a presentation at the conclusion?
Yes.
I would expect. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Who else? Chairman? Karen?
Okay.
Okay. I think what's a minor request, on teaching and learning the short-term goals, in the laying out the strategic plan action items for this year, on the increased rates of mastery on all standardized assessments, we sort of specifically reference the 3 to 8 ELA and math. I think we should strike that. I think it's too specific given the fact that we don't have any reliable baseline data to start with. And we could either think about other kinds of measures or revisit it in the future as to whether or not that was appropriate to use.
I don't disagree with you, Sarah, that the data that we have is unreliable because of the opt-out rate. The problem is that you're talking about standardized testing. So if you want to just, if you're going to take out, I don't have a problem with you taking out 3 to 8, but I don't want to put something else in that slot because we don't really have standardized testing in 3 through 8. But if you want to take it out, just leave it as Regions Advanced Placement and Baccalaureate.
I'm fine with taking it out.
Fine with that.
I would agree.
Okay.
Consider it
Thank you.
struck.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
That wraps up our discussion. We will now move on to our next item. We're going to open it now to comments from the public. We welcome and appreciate anyone's comments or questions. If you have any, if you would approach the podium and give us your name and town of residence, please. Hi.
Wait. Yep, that one. Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay. Emily Dalto, Old Brookville. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and the Glenhead Elementary School kindergarten parents. Very concerned about the number of the students in Glenhead in kindergarten compared to the Seacliff Elementary and Glenwood Landing. If you could explain why we seem to have the same number in Glenhead as do the ones in Seacliff. We're at 42, they might be at 42, 43. I believe Glenwood Landing is at 67, maybe 66.
67.
We're at 2 sections. Seacliff is at 3 sections. Glenwood Landing is at 4 sections.
Right.
So, from my understanding, there was a projected enrollment back January 26th of this year, and we were slotted at 3 sections. And why now? We had no time to discuss our concerns before the school year began, and now we're in this position. So I don't know what we can do to fix this.
Please.
Okay. So when we originally had looked at hi, how are you?
Good. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you finally. So when we had initially done our demographic projections
Right.
for enrollment, we had projected 3 sections at each of the schools,
Correct.
right? And then when registration actually happened, we had far fewer kids register at Glen Head than the other schools initially.
By when? By when? did you recognize it?
So I'm going to get to that in a second, right?
Okay.
So by about, I'd have to look at my notes, but I would say sometime in maybe February or March of last year, we had made the determination that we were going to shift, because of the enrollment pattern, that we were going to shift one section, one of the Glen Head sections, over to Glenwood Landing. So that was where the 4th section of Glenwood Landing came. Over the course of the spring, we waited for, we watched it really carefully over the course of every week. Into the summer, it was literally almost every day. When we did the math, so I'll take Glenwood Landing for a second, right? So if I took those 66 kids and I put them in 3 sections,
Right.
those sections were too big, right? At the time, when we sent out placement letters for Seacliff, there were 45 students enrolled, and we held those usually those placement letters go out on Thursday before, so we actually held them until Monday to just see what would happen. And on Monday, we had 45 students registered for Seacliff, so that would have been a section of 23 and 22, and so we kept the section counts at 3. Unfortunately, between when those letters were mailed, right, with placement, and actually kids who showed up, right, it's now 43. 43. So we lost a couple of kids. Now, when you look at the how those kids were placed, right, it didn't even break well, right, because there's one class of 16 and 2 classes of 13, because the kids were, one student came out of Mrs. Getz's class, and one student came out of I forget who the other teacher was. So that's why there is the imbalance. With regard to Glen Head, right? So with the Glen Head enrollment has remained very, very stable since way back in January, February when we did that. So I was always very open through the budget process, through the PTA presentations, that was going to be in 2 sections. Had I known how this was going to break, truthfully, I would not have. I would have run the Seacliff sections in 2. I wouldn't have run them in 3, and I probably would have run a similar staffing to what I have at Glen Head. But the letters had gone out, and the kids showed up, and then we waited for them to arrive, and they didn't arrive. And so, at this point in time, it doesn't make sense to. We don't believe it's good for the children to collapse those 3 into 2. That's a lot of transition for kids at this point in time.
The second week of school?
Yeah. For 5-year-olds, yes. I would say that.
So why not add another section to Glen Head?
Hold on, I'm going to get there, right? So.
It just seems like it's unequal. Any way you look at it, the math is, the data is there, it is what it is.
So in Glen Head, with the students, with the 21 in each section, Lori Nimmo and I had spoken in the weeks preceding up to the first day. We, at the time, thought that the classes would be too small. if we had split them into 3. And so we thought, how do we support the children? So we consulted with the teachers, and we agreed that a shared teaching assistant would be a good way to support the classes. So that's, so at the last board meeting I talked with the board about that, and the board authorized me to do that. And then we hired somebody within a day or two who the teachers were involved in selecting. Now, the Mrs. Loring and Mrs. White are amazing kindergarten teachers, amazing, and so I have a lot of confidence in them. We are listening to them very carefully, communicating with them every day, looking at the schedules are being structured right now, so we want to know, Mrs. Nimmo and I want to know at what points during the day is there not coverage for the classes, and then the teachers know. I have communicated it to them directly, to Mrs. Nimmo, Mrs. Nimmo to them. She and I will meet with the teachers again, probably either this week or early next week, to talk about how things are going. And I think I shared with you in my note to you, if the teachers say that they need more support, they will have it without hesitation. But we want to make sure that we're supporting those classes properly, because there are lots of times during the day when there are there are 2 teachers in the room during school-wide enrichment, during not language, STEAM, right? So there are lots of opportunities during the day. What we're trying to figure out is where in the day are there gaps, and if there are gaps that need to be filled, we'll fill them. I promise you.
I don't know, that doesn't, still seems very unequal. And what happens now, we're only in the September, 13th, 12th today? I mean, what happens when you get more kids in the district going into Glen Head? I mean, you might get another family or 2, then what? Now the numbers are even higher. What's your plan then? What are your plans? Because that does happen. I mean, I have a friend of mine that explained that several years ago, her daughter's in Glen Head right now in the 5th grade, and she said kindergarten for her was horrific. The class, the student, I think the students were up to like 48. It was just under 50 students, and they had 2 sections. It was horrible. Midway, they had 52 students, and it was a mess. She said never again. That why they didn't speak up when they did, early on. And I don't want my child in that position. The children come first. All of the children. There are children in in the class that have IEPs. My son being one of them. They took away the co-taught class, teachers. I mean, there's, I don't know. It just doesn't seem balanced between the 3 elementary schools, and it seems like Glen Head is always the one, the worst end of the stick always. Does anybody else want to comment, or? I mean, I have other parents.
When she's finished, if you'll go to the podium. You can speak on any topic when she's, if you'll just, but to go to the, you just need to go to the podium and give us your name and town of residence. Do you want to join her? Just give us your name and town of residence.
Katja Armada, Old Brookville.
Thank you.
So just in regards to the class size, if this current kindergarten class has, 22 kids in each class? 21 kids in each class. Will then the board look at, if this will be their grade, will they be split up into 3 sections for 1st grade? What is the class size standard for the district? I'm a Glen Head parent, and I feel that Glen Head often has the most number of kids per section.
So as we build the staffing for next year, right, it's not that because you have 2 this year, you'll have 2 next year or 2 the next year or whatever. It's always based on real enrollment, right?
Right.
So just because they have, if, like for example, if Seacliff stays at 43 for this year going into next year, that will likely collapse from 3 sections into 2 sections, right? But I'll look at that as I build it on real kids, right? Our numbers, when we talk about, primary, as a leadership team, we talk about, 22, 23 being, in the range of appropriate. Last year's kindergarten kids at Glen Head were in sections of, I think, 20 or 21. And that was reasonably consistent across the district with no support.
What are the numbers in middle school and high school? I mean, I don't have kids in that section yet. I'm in elementary, so what are the class sizes in high school on average?
I mean, they can be I don't have that with me, but they can be depending on the enrollment, they can be low 10, 12 kids, depending on what the class it is, and they could be as high as
30.
25, 26, 30,
30, and if it's a lab classroom,
Right.
they don't have more than 25 because they don't have the lab tables for it. But if it's not a lab classroom, there have been as much as 30 kids. And also, I understand your point, but there have been years where there have been 24 kids in the classroom, which is consistent with you asked about the policy. The policy is 24, but it's up to the discretion of the superintendent if he thinks it needs to be less. But we had 23, 24 years in Glen Head. Just so you know. I'm not saying that's optimal. I'm just saying it's not.
But like the number 24, which I agree it's not optimal. I think it's a lot no matter what grade you're in, right? Is that a policy that we have in the school district? Is that state standard, or is that something that the board decided years ago?
So there are two ways to think about this, all right? Or two ways that, so there are contractual guidelines that in the teacher's contract, right? And those numbers are higher. They're in the mid to high 20s, I believe, right? That's the contractual limit that that a teacher may have in a class, right? For kindergarten, once the class reaches, I believe it's 23, then the teacher would get support from a teaching assistant or a monitor or something so that we would work with them on that. There aren't, and so to Trustee Russo's point, the guidelines are high, or around 24 or something like that, around what we think to be best practice. The research is, I'm not going to argue with you. The research is clear that smaller class sizes with primary kids is a good thing. The research is also very clear that the having a high quality teacher trumps all of it, right? So if you had a class of 13 teachers with an okay teacher versus a class of 25 children with an outstanding teacher, in almost all circumstances, the research shows that the students who have the outstanding teacher
So you're trying to say
do
that
better.
Seacliff doesn't have good,
That's you're taking my comments out of,
That makes no sense. We're talking about numbers, and numbers, the reality is that Seacliff has 13 kids in a class, and my class has 21 students. It's not equal. I don't care how good the teacher is, they're all amazing teachers. I have not a question about any of the teachers. They're very capable, they're very experienced. That's not what we're trying to discuss and get a resolution on. It's the number of children. You're not going to have the individualized attention to these children. There are children in the class that have IEPs, that have issues with speech, other behavioral issues that we don't even know about. They just started school. How are these teachers, this one teacher, going to handle all that with somebody going back and forth, a teacher's aide? She's not a certified teacher. I don't know what kind of experience this girl has.
They're certified.
She is a certified
Absolutely.
teacher.
Okay, but she's young. She's not very experienced. I mean, I've met her.
We can't,
I'm sorry?
we have to be careful about speaking about particular persons in public comment
Okay,
because
I'm
of.
sorry.
No, I understand.
I'm just explaining that.
I absolutely
if she's-
understand.
if
I
she's
just wanted
teacher's
for the
aide,
board
She
to
wasn't
kind
hired
of frame it.
as a teacher, right? It's an aide. I don't know
Not
what
an
kind
aide,
of,
an assistant.
what kind of certification they need, or, I don't know. I mean, you can't compare.
So the teacher, let me interrupt you for a second if I may. The teaching assistant that we hired, Ms. Arp is her name. She is a certified elementary teacher.
Okay.
We just happened to hire her as a teaching assistant. She worked in kindergarten last year at Glen Head as an intern through Hofstra's program. So we have a lot of confidence in her, and she knows the children. And as I said to you before, we are talking about this every single day. So, and until we have, until we really have all of the scheduling information, remember, it feels like we've been here a little bit longer, but we're really only just finished the 5th day of school, and 2 of them were half days. So we really want to make sure we understand what the needs of the cohort are. And then once we understand what the needs of the cohort are, we'll look at how they're supported, and then I promise you, you don't know me, but I'm gonna give you my word that I'm gonna do what is right by your children. But I need to make sure I have time to be able to understand what is there.
You want to say something?
Okay.
Ronnie?
Hi, I'm Ronnie. I'm from Old Brookville.
Thank you.
And I'm here for the same reason, because I have a kindergarten class. And it's really not fair. I feel the same way, because these are formative years for our children. And they really need to be looked after very well. And I just don't feel personally that a class of 21 with one teacher would help. If we can't do another section, at least we can have another aide or somebody else in the class to look after the children. That's what I'm proposing.
Okay, and that's so the result of the scheduling will determine what's needed for that. So even if we had, even if I said to you tonight that I would recommend a second teaching assistant, right? We would have more teaching assistants time than we actually need to cover the 2 classes because of all the additional supports that are there. So just let us figure out, once we figure out the schedule, right, we'll be able to make an informed decision about what kind of additional support we need for those sections. But we just need a few more days. The teachers are really,
Okay.
the teachers are working on it, right?
Okay, as long as we know that this
The teachers
will
are,
be taken.
yes, the teachers are working on
We're
it.
in contact with the teachers daily, so we, just to find out what's going on.
Yeah,
in the classroom,
absolutely.
so
And
Because these are 4 and 5-year-olds, so
Yes,
it's just
absolutely. I
feel that they
understand.
won't grow properly
I understand.
in their learning skills.
I understand.
Thank
And
you.
you'll communicate
Of course.
with all the parents where we are and what our plans are so that
Yes.
everyone's clear.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you for coming tonight and letting us hear your thoughts.
Hi, Suhana Singh, Old Brookville. Hi,
Suhana.
Dr. Girizzo.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm great.
My sister is in the kindergarten class at Glen Head. The stats are as follows. There's 42 children at Glen Head, maybe 43. The total may be one or 2 off. We are up to 21 children per class with only 2 sections and a shared teacher's aide. The concerned kindergarten parents don't feel that this is adequate assistance in the classroom for the teachers, no matter how capable the teachers are. There is so much more required academically today from kindergarten years in the past years, kindergarten classes in the past years. When I went to kindergarten there was, I'm not sure the amount of kids in my class. I probably didn't know how to count them the first day of school.
I bet you did.
I know that my teacher was wonderful, but I'm not sure if she was able to give adequate attention to each student. She was a wonderful teacher, but even juggling around 21 new students, some of which who don't know how to read, that's hard. So I also stand by the parents in that there should be an additional teacher or class aide, a permanent class aide, not one who juggles around. To my understanding, Seacliff School has exactly the same number of students, or 1 more, than Glen Head. We have 42, they have 43. They have 3 sections of 16, 13, and 13. Glenwood Landing has 67 students with 4 sections, 16, 16, 17, and 17. As parents and as an older sister, We feel that we are not being treated equally to the other elementary schools in the district. So I, along with the parents, and I'm sure all the other siblings, I'm not sure if they're as old as I am, but we want to ensure our children's academic success in this first formative year. I'm sure that you will take this issue seriously, and we look to rectify the situation as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Johanna.
Thank you.
Patra Matter, Brookville. I just have a couple of questions. Regarding the 5-year strategic plan that it's just been, I guess, recently presented to the board, when will that, will that be made available to the parents to review at some point?
Once the board adopts it, we can start going public with it.
Okay, so you go public when the board adopts it. Okay, as far as the committees, you said that there will be some parent involvement, specifically on homework. In our school, I see there's a lot of parents that agree that homework should go away, and a lot of parents that agree that some kids don't get enough homework. So specifically on that, I think it would be very important to get both sets of parents on board, because you know, there are certain things that I feel like, yes, technology, everything, you know, the iPads, the whole thing, it's all good and great, everybody's texting. You know, I think we have to take a step back, and I've voiced this before. I still have an issue with the fact that our kids don't write script. And Miss Nimmo has heard me numerous times, and Miss Arp last year did a script program at the library, and it was tremendous. And the 4th grade, now incoming 4th graders, a lot of them are writing script, and I think that's really important. So you know, I'm the vote and don't take homework away, because I think you have to be able to sit in your own zone and be able to reflect on what you learned that day, be it 10 minutes or an hour, according to the age and the grade. So I think it would be great if you can have parent involvement in that. As far as the students, I think it's great bringing some students back that are now in college, you know, to help the kids in high school. But I participated a couple of years ago on the SVOs, prior, I guess, to your coming in that summer when things turned over, with some parents and some educators, and some students came in, and the amount of information that they brought to us to analyze was really incredible, and the level that they actually, you know, spoke to present it to us. So I think it would be very important to get their point of view of what they want to learn and how they want to learn it, to make the school a more, you know, pleasant experience for them. As far as the family gap services, I know I'm a parent, I have a voice on that, but my understanding from reading listening to the very little I just did, isn't that really a social worker job? Like, shouldn't that the social workers be reaching out to those families instead of us spending more time and effort and trying to reach out to the what's the word he said, the parent on the
margin.
The margin.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that would be great if, you know,
Social
if I have
worker
two
will be
cents.
definitely involved in that.
Okay.
Yes.
And lastly, on the standardized testing, why do we have such a high opt-out rate? Do we know any study? Does the board know why we have one of the highest opt-out rates in Nassau County?
It's not one of the highest in Nassau County. It's high, but I don't think we have a definitive answer. I think we could all speculate, but I'm not sure that would be helpful.
I don't necessarily know.
Okay. But we have to offer the standard testing, right? I mean, it's...
Yes.
Yes.
So I have an obligation, so I take an oath, right, that says I have to administer the regulations of the commissioner, and the regulations of the commissioner and the state and the laws of the state of New York require that I administer these tests in grades 3 through 8 in ELA and mathematics and 4th grade in science, and so I do that. And so what has happened over the course of time is that some parents have seen those tests as unnecessary or not helpful or not developmentally appropriate for lots of different reasons. Families make individual decisions on whether or not they want to have their kids take those tests, and we honor those requests. But we, as a district, so the board and I, can't promote opt-outs, right? We can't encourage kids to not take tests.
I agree.
Yeah. So,
I want to understand why so many parents opt out.
Long Island happens to have a much higher rate of opting out than in other regions of the state. And I don't know the like a real specific answer to that, but I have some theories.
Okay, thank you.
One question for you is if you're interested in participating in some of this work with me, with us, either leave me your name and email and phone number, and I'll give you a call over the next day or two, or you can shoot me an email. I'm probably easier to
I'll do
find.
that. I'll
Okay,
email
now
you
we'll
now.
get you involved in
Thank you.
in something. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Someone else? Thank you. Name and town of residence, please.
Hello, Elizabeth Yakos of Brookville. It's actually a question. At a meeting, I think it was about a year ago, or last year, I'm not exactly sure, but I remember hearing great things about the high school and the plan to co-seat IB and AP, and that the graduating class was going on to great colleges. Have we ever published that information?
It should be on our website. It's not?
It's not, no. I just didn't know where I could get it.
If I will forget, I promise you.
I will call you.
No, if you also, if you send me an email, I'll get it out to you.
Okay, wonderful.
Peter, I don't
thank
think
you.
we've ever published where the kids went to school specifically, but it is in the newsletter.
I thought so.
One of the newsletters states the colleges
Yes.
where the kids go every year. I think it's the one that Shelley publishes in June or July at the end of the year. And usually, if you look, I know the website has gone through a transformation, and I'm with you. I can't find anything anymore. But there usually is a report on student achievement in the high school, and every year the high school principal Cousins, gives a report on student achievement to the PTO. It's usually, I think, the end of September, beginning of October, right? Somewhere in there, October. And that usually gets published on the high school website.
Okay. I had seen on the high school website there seems to be, or there was a general list which I think was compiled over 4 or 5 years, that our graduates have been to these schools over the past 4 or 5
Right.
years. But we don't publish that annually?
So we actually do.
do.
Yeah,
Okay.
we do.
Oh.
So there's I'm going to send you, we'll get them up on the website as well. But
Okay.
there's a couple of pieces of information that I think will be helpful to answer your question. One, we have the report on student achievement that we did that was done last year. There was one for the elementary program, one for the middle school program, one for the high school program, right? I think the information that you're specifically referring to with regard to AP and IB has to do with the January presentation on AP and IB, right? There's also, but I'm going to check and see where these are on the website. It could possibly have to do with the ADA accessibility. So all of the PDFs have to be ADA accessible. So those may not be, but we'll get that resolved. Thirdly, there's what's called the high school profile.
Yes.
And so that I think that is what you're talking about.
Well, I've seen it for many school districts,
Yep, so
local school districts, and it's one page, and it
Yep.
lists how many kids went to
And
this
that
school and
did
that
just go
school
up on our
annually.
website, I
Yep,
think.
and
We
that
don't do it. We don't list the number of students. You're correct. We don't do it in the same format as like at Chaminade. When I get that list, because my husband went there, it says they had 5 kids go to Boston College.
Right.
We just list the colleges where they were accepted or attended.
Over 4 or 5 years, right?
No,
So-
and we do it annually.
Yeah.
I think that's
we do it
what
annually.
that's
Okay.
Darisa's trying to tell you, but it's not. I think in the format that you're thinking of, like a Chaminade that says we
Right.
sent 5 to Boston College and 3
Right,
to
right.
Fordham or 10 to Stony Brook. We don't do it in that same.
No.
I think that's what she's getting at,
All right.
Peter.
That we don't have it that way, but we just revamped the high school profile, redesigned the whole thing. And
Oh.
I believe that just went up on the website, because that's going to go out to that goes with all of our college applications.
Right.
Right, so that's an
okay.
important document that the colleges use to understand our school. So we'll get you everything. I'll get you all those reports in that high school profile. I made a note, you don't even have to email me, so I won't forget.
Okay, great. Thank
All
you so
right,
much.
it's nice to see
Thank
you.
Thank you. Name and town of residence.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Lisa Cashman. I live in Seacliff, and I have a kindergartner. But I'm not here to talk about that. I actually wasn't going to say anything tonight, but I picked up something similar from your dialogue related to the strategic plan with respect to homework and having a policy versus not having a policy. And I just want to go back to something I heard Trustee Jones say about looking to research. And I really want to encourage you all to please be brave and to please take a position and to actually look at the research, because I think you will find that there's a body of work that suggests, particularly for younger kids, the learning through play is way more important than sitting for a half an hour with the ditto sheet when they get home and are all compressed down. People feel strongly on both sides. Perhaps that's a topic for a future meeting to be on the agenda, because I know people will come with stacks and stacks of research for you to consider, but please don't back away from having a policy, because I think there's an opportunity here to be progressive and on the cutting edge and help our kids learn better, particularly when they're young. Thank you.
I wasn't suggesting, just so you know, that there not be a policy.
Okay.
There's a policy, and then there's this, which is a different document than the policy. There is a homework policy in the district that's going to be looked at. So
Great.
there's a policy with a P, and then there's this, which we were looking at, guidelines and policies regarding homework. The discussion was about the implementation and the revision of the big policy, how we were going to do that with smaller practices and smaller policies and guidelines, correct?
Yeah, sometimes I refer to some of the board members who worked with me on policy committee this year have heard me say there's policy with a capital P and policy with a lowercase p. And so the policy with a capital P is the board policy. Those are the big, broad guiding statements. And then the little p policies are the things that they're not really board policies, but they're things that we do, and sometimes they get confused with board policy, but they're the practices and that we adhere to. Either way, your point is understood and well taken.
Thank you.
Right. So we're on it.
Lisa, I just want to add, so one of the reasons, so we're not educators here on the board, some of us are educators separately, but that's not our role here on the board. But as representative of the community, we certainly hear those two sides you're talking about. And as parents also, we see that and hear that. And I think one of the reasons I wanted to propose this, and I'm glad that we're taking it up this year, is because from my perspective, it's enough with the individual anecdotal experiences and people's opinions. It's time to do that research. So I'm really glad we're looking at it to at least see what's out there across the spectrum to inform our decisions. So whatever we decide is right for North Shore, we then proceed with that.
Great. Yeah, and there is a body of work, and like I said, I hope that this is on a future agenda, because I know that there are parents who would love to be heard on this topic. When I said, oh, they're talking about homework, it was a big deal. So thank you.
Thank you. Name and town of residence.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Lamont from Seacliff, and I just wanted to address what you were saying about opting out. So the reason that the opt-out movement is so big here is that the parents who are a part of it hope to change the system. And we're hoping that the inordinate amount of time that's spent on the test preparation would be better spent doing something else, because we don't see the test as a valid assessment. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that's why. So we'll say, that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
There are still a few members of the audience who have not spoken. Public comment is still open for you. Anyone? Okay. We'll conclude public-
Excuse me, Sarah, can I just address an issue that came up?
Other trustees have, so yes, please.
Regarding the issue of inequity in class sizes across the district. It's a problem every single year. I think we had a group of parents, I forget what grade it was, I think from Seacliff, who were here this spring. Was it the fifth grade? And what the larger issue is, one thing is it pits one school against another school as they're fighting for scarce resources. And I think we have to really think long-term and come up with a way of addressing this, because it's inefficient. It ends up costing us more money when you can have between two schools average class size of 18, but instead we have 14 and then 21, and then we're hiring a teaching assistant. So there's a cost to the district of those inefficiencies. And maybe we could think about putting on a future agenda, creating a committee, charging the superintendent, assistant superintendents with certain proposals on how to do it. There are creative ways of addressing this. I know in Great Neck, we're talking classes here, but when they had any inequity between the high schools and one school got significantly larger than the other, they created an optional attendance zone where students were given a choice of what school to go to. And there are a lot of things that maybe we can come up with as a district so that we can address that, because they're right. When you look at Glen Head, and I was looking at the numbers at Glen Head, it just turned out just where they're at. If you added one teacher, it would bring it down to 13 kids, but on average, I think they might be 3 kids higher, on average as a school, class size, than the other schools are, and they're right, it's not fair, but we need to come up with some way of addressing this particular issue, because it costs the district. It costs us a lot of money, and it's not good for their kids.
One thing on this.
Name and town of residence?
Natasha Gordon Seacliff. My child was in a kindergarten class that was 21 students, and he did great. So that I don't think that's the issue so much as the inequity. But Seacliff, I know, had 16 new kids enrolled in the last 2 weeks of August because people were moving into houses, and they're not allowed to enroll until they're actually not just closed on their house, but actually living in it. And that may be something that can be adjusted so that you have numbers earlier, and then you can plan better. I mean, maybe once contracts are signed, people are allowed to enroll.
We actually know who all those people are, right? Because when they, because they,
That's not creepy at all.
it's
Right.
it's not like we go out looking for them. They come and they find us. So what'll end up happening is they call the school, they'll call the registration office, and because they need to be living in the home, we take their information. And so when I am doing the weekly captures or the daily captures on what the attendance, what the registration trends are, like Mrs. Miller is our central registrant. She will send me, the list of kids plus this family's coming to see me here, this family's coming to see you here. Then we cross-reference that with the principals, and the principals say, I know the so-and-so family is closing here. So then there's a lot of triangulation that happens.
There just may be a more efficient way.
I have tried for years to figure it out. We should sit and talk about it, because I've been doing this and it's never
The
easy.
problem is the law requires it to be the child's actual place of residence. So you can own a house in the district, but unless the child is actually residing there, under New York law, they're not entitled to go to our district. So there were instances when families were displaced or undergoing renovations where their children were not legally supposed to be in districts. So, and contracts have contingencies. I do this day in and day out. 99% of the time, they close, but there are some times they don't. And the problem is the district is constrained by New York State law, and that's why they require the utility bills to show that you're actually residing in district. So you know.
But to her point, we want the information, we want them on our radar, and you're trying to work on that. And I'll add that I think it's possible that with the transitions we've gone through, that we may have not done as much PR and heavy community outreach to get people to sign up incoming kindergartners as early as possible. I think there's some room for us to get out there and say, please come tell us your children are coming. And this year it looks like apparently we need to continue to follow up and say, please tell us you didn't go away or disappear.
Right, tell us if you're...
Right.
Well, because I know in the spring,
Seacliff
Seacliff had a lower enrollment, and and there were a lot of parents going around saying, hey, you've got a kindergartner, have you signed up? Because otherwise we're going to wind up with 2 sections. And there was a lot of outreach in that regard, and I think...
Right, and we really do. It's really not an exacting science, right?
No,
Because it's people
clearly.
moving in and moving out. And, so
And
we.
at some point you commit.
At some point, there's a point in time when those class letters have to go out and we have to, and we have to commit. And in this case, and usually it works out okay, and in this case, we had 2 kindergartners not show up, and that would have been a game changer for the staffing model at Seacliff. And I'll tell you, I try my best. Right.
And he did give us, we had the numbers at every single board, every
No,
single
I was
board
here at the last
meeting,
meeting when
every
the discussion
section.
happened. and
Yeah.
We've been discussing
It was very close.
I think it's important to add just one thing. In those discussions, I think the priority was what's educationally appropriate, and I think that, as it shaped up that we were looking at maybe classes of 11 or 12, that was the advice given to us by the educators was that doesn't make sense. But I want to make it clear that as a board, this wasn't a way to save a teacher, save a little bit of money by putting them in larger classes. Like, it worked out. I'm glad you came and shared this with us, and it worked out this way, but it wasn't done specifically as saying we have X number of, if we had a family of, sextuplets move in here and that's what happened, things would have changed. We would have found the money for it at that time. So it's not a cost-saving move to have larger classes. It just, for all these reasons that Peter explained, it worked out that way. But I think it's important to know that that wasn't what the...
You would have to go back up there.
Just a quick question. You said 45 with Seacliff, originally it was, and then 42 with Glen Head. Why wouldn't you have thought, oh, let's just put a teacher's aide in each classroom and make it 2 sections? It's still not a huge gap. It's not 50 and 40. There's still just, 3 kids. I mean, having 3 sections is a big difference in having, 2.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, the numbers just don't make sense to me.
I understand. We, like I said, we talked about all the different options, and the option that we thought made the most sense to support the children at the time was to have the shared teaching assistant. Like I said, I told you we're going to stay on top of this.
They don't tell, they don't inform the parents so that we could, if we have any concerns before school starts. I feel like with Seacliff and their issue with the 4th graders going into 5th grade, now they went from 2 sections to 3 sections, which I totally agree. I mean, no, they were at 3 sections and they wanted to cut it down to 2 sections, excuse me, and they kept them at 3. But they kind of knew that was going to happen, like that was the plan early on in the year, so they had a chance to, voice their concerns and explain why they felt that keeping it at 3 sections in 5th grade, that's we had
Right,
no
I think they got that information from attending the board meetings and
Right,
hearing the budget
right,
discussion. The same thing is if people had been at board meetings earlier in this year, they would have heard us discuss.
But in
They would
that-
have heard us discuss the size of the kindergarten sections too at our previous meetings. I think.
That shows 3 sections were slotted for Glen Head for kindergarten, 3 for Glenwood Landing, and 3 for Seacliff, back to the
Yes.
kindergarten. So if it had said 2, my radar would have gone up and said, hey, why this? But it looked perfectly normal, so there was no radar. But yet, the 4th grade in Seacliff, they had slotted for 5th grade, oh, we're going to cut it down to 2 sections. So of course, the parents knew what was going to happen, and they had a voice. We didn't have a voice. Here I am, it's September now, and my kid's in 21 kids in his class.
I
So,
hear you. I'm going
have the paper here.
The
So-
board is going to have to address the rest of the business that we have to accomplish
Thank you.
tonight. I am going to trust that Dr. Giarrizzo is going to stay on top of this and follow up with you.
Thank you.
But if that is not the case, I hope you'll let us know.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for coming tonight.
I just have a quick question on that matter. What would be the red flag that signifies that you would actually make the change of from 2 classes to 3 classes? What would be a red flag indicator?
I'm not sure I understand your question, Suhana.
She's saying, is there a number? But
Oh,
you're
is-
saying it's your
So
conversations with the classroom
what
teachers
would
and
spark
what's
that
happening.
attention to you that would make you develop that other 3rd kindergarten class?
For Glen
You
Head.
said that you're on top of it. You said that if Mrs. White or Mrs. Loring voices their concern to you, then you will do something about it. You said that earlier. So what about the children in the class? What about their parents? The children don't have a voice at this point. Their parents or their older siblings are speaking for them. The majority of them, from the contacts I've seen, do believe, as we do, they're very concerned. So if we're the majority and you're just relying on the teacher's voice in this matter, can you have some plan where if the parents sign they hand in a written note saying they're in support of a third class being developed, would that be a red flag indicator for you to develop a third class? Like, what would be that indicator?
So my job is to make decisions that are in the best interests of all the children, right? And so when I make those decisions, I have to study lots of data and information, and both things that are anecdotal and things that are not. So some things I can get real hard data on, and some, so I have qualitative versus quantitative stuff, right? And so that's what I'm doing right now, Suhana. And so there's no, so if I got 42 letters tomorrow, I'm still going to say I need to study it, right? And I need to be able to, so when I come to the board with a recommendation, that it is informed and that I feel that it's in the best interest of the kids. So that's what we're doing right now. And it's not, so it's not nobody has, there's nobody whose voice is more important than others, or who has veto power over any of this. Ultimately, I've got to study what is and then make a recommendation, and that's what I'll do.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are going to close public comment and move on with the rest of our agenda. We are now up to action item B, which is our personnel issues. Could I have a motion? Could I have a second?
Second.
A third and a fourth. All in favor? Thank you. We'll move on to action item C, which is the adoption of the strategic plan for 2018 through 2023 that we discussed earlier. Do I have a motion? A second? Second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Action item D is the adoption of specifically this year's goal, the 18-19 district goals. Do I have a motion? A second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion?
Do we edit that word, or do we want to reread that?
As amended.
As amended?
Yes. Do I have a motion to adopt as amended?
Motion.
A second. I have. All in favor? Thank you for that point, Dave. Action item E is the approval of the memorandum of agreement between the North Shore Central School District and the United Public Service Employees Union. This is the paraprofessional unit. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Do we have any further discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Action F is the approval of the fall community education structures. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
A second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. If it's okay with everyone, I will combine actions G through H2. These are the very generous donations that we are grateful to have. This includes the acceptance of the donation from the Glen Head PTO to the Glen Head School for the Dash and Dot robots, the 3D printers, and the vinyl cutters. The acceptance of the donation from a district resident to cover school supplies. He prefers to remain anonymous. The Glenwood Landing SCA is donating items to the teacher's workroom. And we have a resident donating soccer goals to the Seacliff Elementary School. First of all, thank you. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion?
Specifically H2.
Yes.
Donation of two soccer goals. I think that anytime you put athletic equipment on, you should will be meeting some safety standards.
Mhm.
That value looks very, very good to me. So if we could, I'm concerned about that.
Okay.
We'll follow, I'll get that information, we'll follow up.
And how we proceed with that.
Right, do you feel we need to pull that out while you look at it?
I don't have, do we have that, I don't think I have that backup, do I?
Is this going to be specification classes? And,
If you have it, that, I'll,
You can also accept the donation and then
And then
determine whether or not they're safe.
You'd accept a donation, then determine the use. So maybe
How
it
would
could be
we-
used in, scrimmages or PE class, but if it doesn't meet official standards.
I would use it with anything. I think it's a safety issue, so I...
understood. What does it say? Yes.
You got anything?
That figure disturbs me.
So why don't we, I wish I'd known this before we got here tonight, but why don't we,
You want to take that?
why don't we just table it for now, and then we'll do some research on it. So I have more information for you.
Do I have a motion to table H2?
Motion?
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, so can I have a motion to approve G through H1? A second?
Second?
All in favor? Thank you. Action item I is the approval of our budget transfers. We need $42,000 to cover special education tuition. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Action item J is approval of a change order. It is a deduction of $27,000 on the boiler room reconstruction at Seacliff. Do I have a motion?
Motion?
A second?
Second.
Is there discussion?
Yes.
Either, Dave?
I do. One of these is reimbursement for phone system damage and custodial overtime that I guess was caused by some problem. Just want to confirm that we were made whole by this, and that this change order recouped all of our loss from whatever this was.
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay. That's all I ask.
Any other questions? Okay, all in favor? Action item K is the acceptance of our federal grants, Title I, II, III, and 4 monies. Do I have a motion?
Motion?
Do I have a second? And I have a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Action item L is the approval of the agreement between the district and Organic World Language. Do I have a motion?
Motion?
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in
I do have a question.
Yeah, of
Sorry,
course.
I was just looking through the website of this organization that we're signing on with, and they wrote, "We do not believe in one-stop professional development. Our intent is to create a sustainable professional development partnership with you and your program to provide the best possible support as you continue your journey toward best practices." So basically, I want to confirm that even though we're approving this for a specific set thing, that's not a one-stop shop, that we have the availability to talk to them to get further help.
Right. The whole Organic World Language came from our teachers who went on workshops to learn about that. I mean, it wasn't to learn about this, but at the workshop they learned about this. We've actually been looking at the Organic World Language and teachers teaching other teachers probably for the last 2 years. Anna Aguiar decided that those workshops were expensive because it was sending teachers to workshops that were far distances away. She thought it would be more economically prudent for us to contract with that organization and bring that learning to all teachers in the language department here. She's going to follow up after the workshop itself to make sure that the implementation of the Organic World Language methodology is being pursued by teachers, practiced by teachers. She will continue that staff development with them and then make a decision on what further staff development is needed from that organization.
That's perfect, thank you.
Okay.
All in favor? Action item N, is a cooperative transportation bid. Is there a motion? And I think there was a second. Also, questions? All in favor? Action item N, intermunicipal agreement between North Shore and Roslyn on transportation services. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor? Action O, authorizing the purchase of equipment from the County of Onondaga, which is, we are buying a truck. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions about the truck? All in favor? Action P is an emergency evacuation agreement between North Shore and Glen Cove schools. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? I'll combine items Q and R, which is school districts, our agreements with other school districts for students who need services. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Action S is the agreement between North Shore and the SCO Family of Services. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
A second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? We'll combine actions T through V, contracts to provide services to students who need various services. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And we have a second. Any
Second.
questions?
I have a question. Olivia, I had sent you an email regarding the contracts for T for Metro Therapy.
Yeah, there were two contracts.
Okay.
One was specifically for all the services that you outlined, the speech and TP.
Right.
The second one was for home tutoring, if it's needed. Usually they use it.
But do they provide that? I mean, those were academic services, and I didn't see that on their
But
website.
we don't use it. It's just a backup plan.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? All in favor? Thank you. Action W is the agreement between North Shore and Ready Consulting Services on our Medicaid reimbursement claims. Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Second? Questions? All in favor? Thank you. X is the agreement with Greg Tang. Do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
Questions? All in favor?
Sarah, did we cover V? Did we miss that one?
Did
we
you say
miss-
V?
Yeah.
I attempted to combine T through V.
Okay, I didn't know if you got V. I'm sorry. I just wanted to double check.
It was, yeah, it's one of those
Okay.
letters. Thank you. I appreciate it. Action Y is between North Shore and the Brookville Center for Children's Services. Is there a motion?
Motion.
A second?
Second.
Questions? All in favor? And Z is the agreement with Adrian Daly for photography. Is there a motion? A second?
Second.
Questions? All in favor? And this brings us to comments from the public. Are there any comments from the public? Rob, may we have your name and town of residence?
Rob Mazzella, Glenhead.
Thank you.
Just while I support and endorse the mission of CASA, I do have a question, I guess, about the lawn signs that are currently out in place around the middle school and the high school. There's a lot of information on there in a very small font size. The signs are very hard to read. I'm just a little concerned that people driving by might become distracted trying to read the sign, and it could pose a potential hazard to the pedestrian traffic around the schools. Don't know if there's anything we could do about that, but I just kind of wanted to bring it to your attention.
Thanks.
Thank you, Rob. Is there anyone else? All right, we're going to move on. Yes? I was like, is that? Yeah. Name and newspaper of residence?
Alyssa Simon, Herald Gazette. In regards to actions items K and V, were those two interrelated with the, I guess, the spirit of the strategic plan being that they support equity activities as well as social emotional things? Very professionally done.
K and V?
K was your first question?
Yes.
Was okay?
Action item K and action item V.
That is federal money that flows to the school district for a number of purposes on a routine annual basis, but the school board is required to accept the money.
And then V was the agreement with the school district and Dr., oh God, I'm not going to botch that name.
That, I believe that's in conjunction with students that need specific services, and it's also a routine contract that we would.
She provides psychoeducational evaluations for children who maybe have suspected of developmental disabilities or updated reports on children that have already been previously identified.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Old business.
Can I just say something on old business if you're going to talk about committee reports?
Sure.
I just want everyone to be aware that that committee report that you gave as an example is not a typical committee report that we did in the past. There was a special situation that arose prior to me being on the board. Only Olivia reviewed the attorney bills. The board did not. I requested that we reviewed them, which caused the formation of that committee, and that was the initial meeting to go over, to report back to the board the result of our actual review. So in the past, when we did committee reports, they were not in that sort of detail. That was a very specific instance where they were that in that kind of detail. Normally, I mean, I would write something up so I would have it and I would hand it to Betty on construction steering. But often our other reports were just verbal reports and there was no written report, certainly nothing of the level of detail on that committee report.
So I'll add to that that my experience with the committee reports is like Mary Ann's, but apparently we unearthed a book where if you go back a few years prior to when we started, maybe it was like 2010 even, there's this whole book of written committee reports that aren't necessarily that lengthy, but very consistent in the format and written. So we may not have the most examplist of examples, but the panel.
No, and I just wanted to, that just has never been you know, for construction steering, I would write up a report like that because there's a lot of items. We were in the middle of a bond. So that was a little different than, you know.
But prior to us, it was, they had a very consistent policy of these written reports.
I mean, it's fine. I just wanted.
I was shocked to see the binder.
Yeah.
It was shocking to find the binder.
It was shocking. I was like,
stop cleaning the office.
So we have, honestly, we have hundreds of pages of these, right? Right. Right. Or I should say it was shocking to have the binder presented to me then.
You were like.
I was like, whoa, what's that? So I guess the function for tonight's discussion here is how do you want this committee reporting to function, right? So this was how you did it in the past. You can do it in any number of ways moving forward. It can be verbal, it can be written. It's really up to the board because they're board, you know, they're your committee, so you can decide how you want to report out to everybody. And what I would do is, just before,
please.
So if there is something in writing, and you would like me to be the person to get that out to the full board, I could do that through my letter to you as they come in, so you don't have to worry about the dissemination and stuff. We can have a place where we say, board committee reports, here they are, to the extent that there are any, there are, if there aren't any, there aren't, and then you'll have time to read them, and then at the public meeting, there could be a way for the respective chairs to say what they need to say.
I mean, I do like the idea of having more of a record of what the committees are doing, and I do very much, and I don't think it needs to be a book-length document by any stretch, but I like the idea of a consistent format, and I like the idea of a permanent record. And for committees, construction steering has very heavy board involvement, but that's not necessarily true of other committees and who run sort of the other committees. And so I think the board as a whole could probably get more detail and more accountability on some of these other committees if we had a little bit more of a consistent process and a way of documenting it in a sense that you needed.
No,
to have something to
I definitely
document.
do, because there was an issue with construction steering that Health and Safety had done something, and it interplayed with something we were working on construction steering. Now, construction steering, we have the minutes. So we could circulate the minutes
Yes,
to
it
the
does
rest
have
of the
to be in there.
board so that they know what's going on in construction steering. That might be helpful. And then if you wanted to do like a small presentation to the public, so they had it. I don't know that you need another document for that, but I probably not, but I know that in LAC we have minutes too. I don't know
So
if
we
you want to
will-
use, if formal minutes are taken, are the minutes, would they be sufficient? And then a verbal summary given at
Yes, why not,
at the
right?
board, rather than
We don't wanna-
duplicate, rather than
right,
making
we don't wanna
work is
double
my
work.
point.
Right. And committees that don't have minutes can start having them or file the report.
Well, committee should have minutes.
They should.
So
I would
maybe
also-
Maybe that's, right.
maybe that's where we should be going, is that
You
the
have
committee should be
minutes and
doing
you file
minutes,
them.
and the minutes should be distributed to the board.
Certainly, those
It's all
committees like
followed.
construction steering that have minutes, that I think suffice. I agree.
So they
There's
should
plenty of
all
info
have
in there.
minutes.
Right,
And
We
they
don't need to
we don't
look
need
at
to
it.
reinvent the wheel.
And the
Correct.
minutes get turned in and they become
I will
part of the
distribute
record.
them as part of my communications with the board, and then when we get to the public meeting, to the extent that there were any committee meetings in between meeting, you can.
Or things we need to highlight for
Or
the public.
you
or
just
whatever
can,
it is.
we can put I put them out so we would do this once a month. We'll have an agenda item for committee reports, and you guys can have at it.
Okay.
I would just add that we should be judicious in the need for reporting, meaning if we have regular meetings and they're fine,
And everybody.
and not a
can
lot
read
of note necessarily is accomplished, that could still be a productive meeting. Doesn't have to take up a lot of time at the board meeting.
it. You don't have to read all the minutes.
No, I
You don't
wasn't
have to,
suggesting
right.
that we
Just
read the
gonna-
minutes. I do think we should, though, give an oral report so the public knows, right? Because the point of having our discussions in public is so the public is aware of what's going on. And if these are board subcommittees, then there should be a report made to the public. And then if anyone feels that they want more information, a member of the public can either send an email, foil the minutes, but I do think that we have an obligation to let the public know what the subcommittees are doing.
I agree. My point is that it should be a terse summary of the highlights.
I'm agreeing with you.
Good.
Okay. I think we're good with committee reports. We have other old business.
I have old bills, if I could speak, old business.
Oh, we know.
Unfortunately, last week I missed the meeting because I was in Pittsburgh dropping off my son for college. And I know an issue came up about the front entrance. I read the minutes. I did not see the video. I don't think it's posted yet. But I understand why the board took the position that they took because they didn't have the background. So I just wanted to give the board some background on the front entrance because it's been a torturous process. So we started talking about this 4 years ago, and I raised $10,000 towards the cost of the front entrance, and I had a friend of mine who was also a landscape designer and a resident of the district draw a plan. There was a determination that the cost of the plan was too much. We then had the architect come from BBS, and they did another plan, and we had people from the high school come and look at it, buildings and grounds, and we drew the plan. So when we went to price out the new plan, there were issues in terms of we had to put in sprinkler systems, and we had to use, we had landscapers who were willing to donate the labor, but they had to submit a certified payroll to show that they paid prevailing wage, which meant that they really couldn't donate their labor, right? It became cost prohibitive for them. So the cost of the project went up, and then there was concern about the sidewalk, and that the Health and Safety Committee had also had some concerns about the crossing over to the Victorian House, and the thought was to tie everything together and do it under one package. Really nothing has been done to that front entrance in forever. I mean, some of those plants were there when friends of mine went to school here, and they're, seriously, those ugly bushes out front, they've been, I mean, they're as old as me. So, I do understand everyone's, they didn't have the background on it. Unfortunately, we can't now put it up for a vote because the monies that were going to be used were monies that were fund balance from last year, and now the books are closed on it. So, for your information, this is not something that I think we're going to be able to do on a volunteer basis because of the scope of the project. And there are people in the community who have been asking for us to do this. And certainly there are organizations such as the high school PTO who's willing to partner with us in terms of what we're doing out there. But I think it's unrealistic to think that this is going to be accomplished. Maybe the PTOs and I'm just talking off the top of my head, maybe other organizations may want to donate certain aspects of it to boost school spirit. But, you know, when you look at this front entrance and you look at that sidewalk where kids are walking and they're cutting through those bushes and it's overgrown, it really is a safety concern. Not to mention that, you know what, people feel better when they're working in a nice environment. When they're going in a nice environment, pride, the appearance of this high school is not in keeping with the caliber of this high school. And I'm disappointed that I understand why people had concerns. I'm disappointed that it didn't go through. I'm just explaining to you so that if we have fund balance in the future or we build it into the budget, this is a 4-year history of trying to get this done. And you're not, as it drags out, I've lost people who are willing to donate their time and their labor and their resources to us. And that's been unfortunate. The original person who worked with me on this, he's out of the district now. His kids are gone, he's out of the district. The PTO, they have the money now to help us. So every time you delay it, the cost went from $25,000 to $50,000 to $75,000. It doesn't get cheaper as we prolong it. It only gets more expensive. So I would ask that going forward we bear that in mind and somehow we build something in the budget and maybe try and partner with some people. I don't know. This was actually going to be a question for you, Jack. Is there anything, and I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yes, you do.
Yes, well, I don't really, because I really meant to email you.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Right, yeah, well, you know, we're members of the bar. It's all good. I'm wondering, is there anything that would prohibit us, and I don't expect you to answer me tonight, to solicit like an adopt-a-spot, right? So could we go to a local business and say, we'd like you to adopt the spot and help it, and contribute something and put a little plaque, this, you know, like you see on the roadside?
I would prefer that one of your organizations
Do it?
rather than the board doing that. I don't think it's...
Not the board, but it can an organization do that? So if an organization came forward that maybe, well, if it's not a not-for-profit, if it's a business entity.
Any one of your parent organizations that would be willing to do it, your sports parents, your music parents, your general PTO?
But what about a private entity? Suppose, I don't know, suppose Northwell
By
Health.
Smith Nurseries or something.
Say again, I'm sorry?
Donated by Smith Nurseries.
Oh, no. Oh, well, there's two different issues. One is, can you solicit? The other is, assuming somebody pays for it, how would you designate?
Right.
And the answer to that is the same as those Coca-Cola scoreboards.
Mhm.
You can put a marking on the school, the platform, wherever you're going to put it, but it has to be small and it has to be non-commercial. If you look at a typical scoreboard, it's got Coca-Cola in large letters. Generally, those are illegal because you're then advertising. Remember, you have a closed audience here on a closed campus, so you can't advertise. And the commissioners have very strict rules about what constitutes advertisement. So we would have to talk about how you would indicate who the donors were. But your question was more about solicitation.
No, I phrase it wrong, but if there were people who wanted to donate, could we acknowledge it? Because I know Coca-Cola actually was willing to donate a scoreboard to us at one point.
I understand.
And you have a board policy too, we would take a
Right.
look at.
Right, so would there be anything to prohibit us from
There
saying,
would be limits based on how you would indicate who the donors were. It would have to be something that's relatively small, where the publication of that is not viewed as advertising, because your children are all closed audience. They're
Right.
essentially stuck.
but it can be an acknowledgement, like a thank you,
Yes,
right?
It could be an acknowledgement, it could be a plaque, but it can't be anything that generally commercial entities would look for in the way of big banners or big letters or drink Coke or any of those.
So the 6x6, billboard is just
That would
out of the
probably-
question,
that would probably not
right?
pass muster.
Right, okay. So that's what I wanted to know, yeah, so that, I just wanted to know if they could, private enterprises would be able to.
Yes.
Okay. Is there other old business? Thank you, Marianne. Anyone else? Okay.
Just a very brief update for the remaining public. On our architectural construction management pre-bond RFQs, they have come to almost to their conclusion. The lawyers have it now. Very briefly, as people know, we put out RFQs for pre-bond services for architects and for construction managers. We interviewed, we met, we had a policy, a subcommittee that convened, and we ended up with some finalists. The entire board met with them, and we selected our preferred firms, and they're in the contractual stage. It was a very collaborative process with the board, who gave a lot of their time, which I, again, thank you for publicly. Olivia, John Hall, and Peter, they were not short meetings, but we all gave it a really good effort, and I think we're going to be happy going forward, and we're now going to work on the process for putting together those pre-bond services with the community collaboratively, assuming we can get the I's dotted and the T's crossed, which I'm sure we will, to figure out what we want to do and what we're going to propose if we do it all to the community.
Thank you. Further old business? Please.
One of the New York State Board applications that came out recently addressed an article about a school district upstate New York that was doing this program that I had referred to, the mental health CPR. And it really is training teachers in each building and then doing turnkey training so we can identify signs, symptoms of mental health in our younger students. If the board is in agreement, I would ask Peter if you could do some research on that school district. And I don't think it was a very expensive program. And I think we need to address the issue of mental health high school look at substance abuse and other issues, other behavioral issues.
Are you go with that?
Yes.
On a slightly related note, I noticed in the newspaper today that the state controller has started auditing schools about their adherence to state law on time children spend in physical education. In particular, Wright schools being cited for the fact that K2, you're supposed to have phys ed every day. And so they cited, maybe it was 10 districts that I saw recently. So I give that to you, sir.
So just so the regs are, I think it's K through 3 is daily. It doesn't have to be scheduled PE daily, but there has to be some kind of physical activity that is happening every day.
I think that is safe and supervised activity.
Yes.
So I think,
Doesn't-
we all have, the notion that, it's kind of a recess situation with everyone running around in different directions.
No, that doesn't count.
That is not a physical education
No,
requirement.
that does not count.
And you don't want those new goalposts being used either.
No. Well, that's
They're
going to set
safe.
me. That's going to set me back because that was what I was going to use.
And so what we've always had before is basically no one's in compliance, but so it's interesting that
Yes,
they're looking at it. Further old business, new business. I've got one item. According to reporting, the regents are meeting on the 17th and 18th, which is soon. And one of the things they're going to discuss is this proposal that districts should be penalized in some way if they don't hit the 95% participation rate on every subgroup, on every grade, on the 3 through 8 ELA and math test. And the proposal that's most frequently floated is, that you would have to redirect your Title I monies into activities to encourage people to take the test. Title I monies are
I'm sorry, but 95% participation or
95% participation in
Okay.
every subgroup, not even overall.
Thank you, sorry.
There's widespread belief that Title I monies are best spent where they're currently being spent and not on sort of PR efforts to convince parents to have their kids take the test. And we're nowhere near 95%, much less on every subgroup. And I would rather not have to waste we're not the district that gets the most Title I money on Long Island by any stretch. But, and I would think our region, I assume it would be in agreement with us, but I'm suggesting maybe we reach out to him.
I can do that.
To the money.
Sounds like a lack issue.
I 100% agree. It's on, yes. 100%. Secure the cost, this crazy 95% thing, and then presumably FIFO, right? We don't have any more public comment, I'm so sorry. We'll hang around for a minute afterwards. Any other new business?
As people see this signs around town, I apologize if they're difficult to read, but CASA is holding a day of wellness on Saturday, September 29th. This has really been a great community effort. We're going to be presenting and teaching alternative activities that children might consider. Yoga, meditation, there's art and creative area that we're going to be working with. We are going to have an education tent that will give all kinds of information to parents, how to talk to your children about drugs, what symptoms to look for. There will be resources. There will be a presentation by an ex-student athlete from Manhasset High School who made some bad decisions, who will be addressing the group. So it's a really multifaceted, we're looking to honor and acknowledge the children that we've lost in our community. So it's really going to be a packed, very different kind of day. So I would encourage everybody to stop down and see us between 10 and 3 o'clock on the 29th.
Thank you for bringing that up, Joanna.
Thank you.
Any other new business? I'm forced to make a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you guys for coming. I have one more, a quick thank you. Alyssa wants to know if the board members will please stay for 2